Hey guys, it's Emma. So today we will be talking about the movie Where Did You Go, Bernadette? This is a book as well, and if you'd like to read the book, I definitely recommend it because the movie was pretty good, but I'll just specifically be talking about the movie as that's the only thing I've seen at this point in time. There will definitely be spoilers, so if you want to watch this movie on your own, I recommend clicking off and coming back. Alright, let's get on to it. Where Did You Go, Bernadette stars Cate Blanchett as a retired architect who is primarily raising her daughter with her husband he has a very high up job at Microsoft, and they don't see each other that much because he's pretty busy and they've kind of grown apart over the years, but she's mainly just been raising her child, Bee. The story starts out with her daughter Bee proposing a family trip to Antarctica. This is as part of a bet the family made with Bee where if she got perfect grades all throughout middle school, she could have any wish she wanted. Within reason, of course. And Bernadette is like, honey, we only made that deal to you so you wouldn't keep asking for a pony. And Bee's like, I know, but this would be super cool and educational. And the parents, as they made this bet to her, don't really have a reason to say no. So we start the plot with we start the movie knowing that our characters will eventually be going on a family trip to Antarctica together. Now, Bernadette isn't very keen on this trip. She has social anxiety, and just the thought of being on a boat with a ton of people does not sound that fun to her. She doesn't really leave her house that much. Her mental health clearly isn't that great, which we'll touch on later. But yeah, she's not into this whole trip idea. And a certain plot device in this movie is her ranting to a virtual assistant via an email, and it's like transcribing her voice, for this email, and it's her telling her assistant to book these trips, how she's totally not on board with it. And throughout this, we kind of get to see her harebrained personality as she kind of just rants, which at first I thought was kind of a cheap plot device because it's kind of just like your voice typing and then your main character can then exposit, I don't know the right word, but then they can just rant as much as they want. And I don't actually mind it because it fits in well with Bernadette's character, but yeah. It was just a bit weird at first. It's a bit weird to get used to when you're first watching the movie. So she tells his personal assistant to book the trip and also orders a bunch of things such as a fishing vest. And then she goes to pick her daughter up from school that day. And so as she's leaving her house, we get introduced to her neighbor, Audrey. Now, Audrey is our classic private school mom. She's a little crazy. She's very much in charge of a lot of things around the school, but they kind of just portray her as a comical character who's maybe takes school life a little bit too seriously because she doesn't really have that much else to do with her life. And so when we first meet her, she is in Bernadette's yard with a man being like, these blackberry bushes are ruining my compost bins. Get rid of them. And Bernadette, who clearly does not want to have to deal with this right now, is like, okay, whatever, just give me the guy's card and I'll get the bushes removed or whatever. And so that kind of wraps up as she goes and gets Bee at school. While at school, we first meet Bee. She's super cute. She kind of reminds me of the girl, her actress reminds me of the girl who played Kitty in To All the Boys I've Loved Before, if you've seen that movie. But yeah. She's great. So she gets in the car and we see Audrey, one of our private school moms, gossiping with another private school mom about Bernadette and how weird she is and how she never leaves her house. And they also throw in this really funny moment where they're talking about the t-shirt design and they're like, hands aren't good enough to be put on this t-shirt. I'm thinking more educational. What do you want the preschoolers to think? It's so funny. As a former private school kid, this really just hilarious. But yeah, so Audrey and this girl, I think her name is, Sue Lynn. Audrey and Sue Lynn are kind of just trash talking Bernadette. And then right as Bernadette sees them and Audrey's like, oh, I'm going to go over and say something to her, something about the bushes, I think. Bernadette steps on it, the car, and they go because their dog has gotten stranded in this room in their house because they have a really old house. So they have to get home, get the dog. And in the process, Audrey falls and pretends that Bernadette ran over her literal foot. Yeah. So then they go home and rescue the dog, and Bernadette gives her daughter her acceptance letter to boarding school, which I don't know if I'd do that. I don't really like being away from home that much, but I have several friends that really like boarding school, and the daughter is obviously really psyched because she's really smart and she really would like to go to boarding school. And so they rescued the dog, everything as well. And then in the next scene, Bernadette, she's out and about, she's at the library. We learn some expose about her character and how she loves the architecture at the Seattle Seattle library, and she gets approached by this like younger woman who's a fan of her, and she's like, oh my god, you're Bernadette Fox. I loved the video on you. You're so cool. Your architecture is so cool. And she asks her for a picture, but Bernadette, kind of rudely, but also we learned before she had social anxiety, so it's not totally out of character. It's kind of just like, how do you know me? Like, distance yourself, get away. And yeah, so then Bernadette goes home to see this video because she's wondering, what is this girl talking about? I haven't been in architecture for, I think it's like 20 years. And so it starts this video, which is also pretty helpful with explaining her background. I don't know how to feel about this, but it does give us some insight to her background. I would have preferred it not to be a video. Maybe like the fans say something or her have a conversation with her husband about it or something like that. But I'm willing to let it slide just because it gave us a good explanation, but I would have preferred some dialogue or some other way to figure out about her past, but the video is fine. So in the video, we learn that she took on several ambitious projects, her last one being this very uniquely structured house that I believe sourced materials from only within 20 miles of the house. It was called the 20-mile house, and for some reason, this project was stalled. The land was like bought out somehow by this guy, and it was demolished, and it just crushed Bernadette. She's like, it was basically what she put like 2 years, I think, of her life and professional work into, and it just gets like destroyed, and she's like, I'm retiring, I can't do this anymore, like I can't take this. And so then after she does that, she retires and obviously settles down with her husband, who can provide for her because he has a great job. But yeah, she kind of just bows out of this field of architecture because of this one tragic failure of this project she worked terribly hard on. So basically, Bernadette is now monologuing about another like issue she has with this trip. She's like, Manjula, you need to get me some seasickness medication because I get seasick and I can't deal with this. So she prescribes her this medication and she goes out in public, which we've learned Bernadette does not like, not a fan of. She kind of wears this like headscarf and big sunglasses. It is very much Anna Wintour. I thought that the sunglasses were a reference to her. But yeah, so she goes out and gets these pills, and they end up giving her a milder dose because apparently the ones Manjula sent for her were like incredibly strong. I can't remember the exact wording, but it was just crazy. And so she sits in this pharmacy waiting for these pills and ends up falling asleep on the couch. She's also wearing her fishing vest, which is, yeah, because it had just arrived. Remember, I said she ordered one before. So then her husband, Elgin, is walking around with his co-workers. And one of those, remember, is Sujin, the mom, who was gossiping with Audrey and saw Audrey get hit by the car. So they're walking by and Sujin looks in the window and there's Bernadette passed out on the couch. And she's like, Elgin, your wife. And he's like, oh. So he goes in and he's like, are you okay? And she's like, yeah, I'm just really nervous about this trip. And obviously she's not okay. We've been getting signals this whole time that her mental health is not great. And he's just like, all right, honey, let's have, I think it was lunch or dinner later. So then a bit later they go to this lunch or dinner place and they sit down and she's like, she's accusing him. She's like, you are conspiring against me. Like these moms, Sujin, Audrey, you know, they are not fans of me. They're going to turn you against me. You know, she's just being kind of paranoid. And he's like, honey, I'm worried about you. And I think at this point in the movie, kind of everyone is, the audience kind of knows that her like behaviors aren't just like a quirk of her character. She's genuinely not very mentally well. She has definite anxiety, which they explained before. And I don't know why, but in this part I said amnesia instead of insomnia. She has insomnia. That's also one of her mental health conditions. Obviously, a lot of social anxiety, which I've been mentioning the whole time. And he's like, do you want to see someone? Do you want to talk to someone? And she's like, no, there's nothing wrong with me. Like, yeah. And so that conversation ends, but he's clearly getting worried because this trip is just, she's kind of not been in a good mental state for a while, but this trip kind of tips her over the edge. And as we can see through her like monologue, remember, with the assistant Manjula, she's like super freaking out about it, even though it's like not that big of a deal. But she, like I said, stays home a lot. So this is a definite departure from her normal. So in the next scene, we see Audrey helping get the blackberry bushes removed. I can't remember if this is the next scene, but this is like the next progression in the story. So she's getting these blackberry bushes removed, and then a little bit later we see she's hosting a party for the private school kids and their parents, and they kind of just like sing some songs, and it's a pretty rainy day, and right as they are like doing this performance and all the parents are filming it, you know, a mudslide from Bernadette's house just like comes right down, straight through Audrey's wall, straight into her like pristine, clean white house, and just wipes out everything. And it's so muddy. And it's because Audrey insisted on getting the blackberry bushes removed, and Bernadette didn't stop her, even though she probably knew, because she was an architect, that this would not be a good plan. But yeah, so that happens, and then Audrey is obviously furious, sends all her guests home because she was just trying to have a nice party with these private school parents. And so then she sees Bernadette coming home, and she runs out and she's like yelling at her, and how could you do this? Like, this is your fault. I was hosting stuff. We had children in there. Thankfully no one was hurt, which fair points, I understand. But then, even after the mudslide, she starts ranting about how none of the other moms like her, and they like her kid, but not her, and there's something seriously wrong with her. And she just goes a step too far and is like, the moms, like, we don't like you, we never invite you or B to anything, like there was a sleepover, mother-daughter, that we didn't invite you to. And at this point, Bernadette gets mad, which I don't blame her, because her daughter is like the only thing she's hanging on for at this point. And this girl, who has been a constant nuisance of a neighbor to her the entire time, has literally just insulted her and her daughter. And she gets out of the car and is like, screw you, like, how dare you bring my daughter into this? And they have this huge fight about it. And Audrey's like, we love B, but you're just a terrible mom. And it's like, okay. But then, of course, B, being super loyal to her mom, because her mom has raised her like all this time, is like, F you, Audrey, like, go away, and no one likes you, and your own son is constantly like stoned, and he's not a good example either, so don't even you dare like get on my mom when you can't even raise your own kids, basically. Which, dang, it's the truth. But yeah. So then we see Elgin meeting with a therapist to describe Bernadette's behavior, and as we have suspected during this entire movie, it is not good. She definitely needs some help, but just will refuse to admit it. And Elgin, trying to be a good husband and making sure his wife is okay, which she is clearly not, is going to stage some sort of way where she can talk to this therapist and get the help that she needs, because she's clearly not mentally well and hasn't been for a while, especially since her project failed and she's just not been leaving the house and all the stuff I mentioned before. So while we do like this cut back and forth in this movie, so while Elgin is meeting with this therapist to talk about her behavior, we also see Bernadette meeting with her old professor. I think his name is Paul Jelinek. Yeah, so he was her old architecture professor, and they haven't seen each other in a while, and she's just kind of describing her life, and we get a lot more insight on her character and maybe why she's not as mentally sound. She's had several miscarriages before B, which is traumatizing for any woman. And then she also, when B was born, B was sick, and she just put all of her effort, as she describes, into raising B and making sure she is okay. And this was the energy that she used to kind of put into architecture. You know, she has this new fixation. This fixation is B. They have this thing throughout the movie where it's like, I think it's like Saint Bernadette, and she has like 16 or 18 like miracles, and Elgin gave her a necklace saying that like her architecture were her miracles. Like, she has so many more miracles to get through. When she had B, she was like, B can be all of my 16 miracles. I don't even need I don't even need architecture anymore. I just need my child to survive, and I'm going to raise this child because she is the one that lived. And it's honestly pretty heartwarming, but then she kind of starts fixating on it, and obviously her mental health is just steadily declining. But she also, we hear, expresses regrets about her architecture. She's, you know, she wished she had continued, even though that house was a very unfortunate occurrence. So far, this movie's been pretty good. I'm liking the setup, everything's going great, but this is where things start to go a little insane. So, I'm gonna skip a part where we learned about this before and just skip to what Bernadette sees. So she gets home and finds her husband, the therapist he was talking to, and a literal FBI agent sitting in her living room with Sujin, by the way. Remember, the one who had been trash talking her with the other mom? The mom's name is actually Sue Lin. I made the mistake of saying Sujin a bunch of times throughout this video. Sorry about that. And so she is she's like, why are these people in my house? Why are you all here? And they're like, sit down. So Instead of having the intervention about therapy we thought we were going to have, we now learn that the person, Manjula, that she has been emailing this whole time is the handle of a Russian hacker. I wish I was making this up. And this Russian hacker has all her information, all their credit cards, because she's been ordering stuff for Bernadette, and the FBI is just like, you know, the FBI dude is just talking to her about this, and she's freaking out because this is like the person that she's been monologuing to the whole movie. And so this is the point where I kind of thought the monologuing started to make sense, because if they're going to set up this slide plot with the FBI, no matter how crazy it is, at least then we understand why she's been monologuing to this person for literally the whole movie. The FBI agent also informs them that the hacker is going to try to defraud her and her husband, steal all their money, you know, that thing, and that that they need to get away, be safe, because this person obviously knows everything about them. And also, throughout all these emails, remember, she's been basically expressing everything she feels, mental health, how she doesn't want to go on this trip, and they read these emails obviously because the FBI has access to them because they're investigating this, and they're like, you are not well. And she is like, guys, like, Elgin, don't, you know, I'm fine. All I need is to go away on this trip with you. And he's like, you don't even want to go on this trip. You need serious help. And she is freaking out at this point because they've basically laid out this plan where they're going to institutionalize her, like put her in a place where she needs help, which she does need help. So this is not, you know, a far cry from what should be happening. She definitely needs a lot of mental health help, as this movie has been setting up the whole time. So then she's freaking out because obviously she doesn't think there's anything wrong with her. She thinks it's just the way she is, and that, you know, she doesn't think there's any basis in this really. And so she goes to the bathroom and she's kind of freaking out. We see her in the bathroom and she jumps out the window. Like, don't worry, it was a ground floor. Oh my God. It was a ground floor window. So it was actually fine. So she jumps out this window and she's like, I gotta get away. This is crazy. My family is literally trying to institutionalize me. My family, which I love. And by the way, the daughter hasn't been involved in any of this. She's been at school for the whole day. She doesn't even know this is happening. So she runs out the window and she doesn't know where to go, but somehow she ends up at Audrey's house, which this was just like a crazy, I kind of loved this plot twist. I was like, oh my God. And so she's at Audrey's house. They're kind of having a heart-to-heart. We learn that Audrey isn't so evil after all. She's just really having difficulties with her son, and he's not living up to, you know, everything she's tried to help him to be, and it's just basically a better insight on both of their characters. So then while they're having this heart-to-heart in the house, obviously, Sujin comes over once they've realized, like, Bernadette's gone, and she's like, where's Bernadette? Like, you wouldn't believe this. She's kind of trash-talking her while Bernadette is, like, literally hiding in the room over. Little awkward, especially since Audrey's had kind of a change of heart on her because they just had a heart-to-heart. So also, this brings up one of my super major complaints with this plot point. So when they realize she's gone, right, they're all standing on the porch. They're like, she hasn't taken her car. Where could she be? And so then the FBI agent gets a call, and it's like, this person, you remember the hacker, has been apprehended in the airport. And just like that, they wrap the entire hacker plotline up. This just feels like such a waste to me. I feel like they shouldn't have even incorporated this plotline if they were intending on doing that. Total waste. This made me absolutely furious, because if you're gonna set up this hacker thing, if she's gonna be exposing to these people the whole movie, and then right as like stuff starts happening, they're like, oh, this is fine. The hacker is apprehended. I wish they just hadn't have set this up. I think instead they should have just had her monologue a ton, maybe have an explanation for that, and not send these emails, and just eliminate the hacker plotline completely and focus it more on mental health, because this was just totally, it came out of the blue and it left fast. And I did not appreciate this part of the story because I thought it would be a way bigger part once it was introduced, and it just wasn't, because they just resolved it. But yeah, so that is resolved. There's no longer a hacker after them. Yay, I guess. And so yeah. So then Audrey helps Bernadette go to the airport, and Bernadette, for some reason, has just now fixated on this trip. She's like, things are gonna go back to normal. I'm going to go on this trip. Like, I'm going to go on this trip. And I don't know why she's so fixated on this now, but she is. And so she gets on a plane, she goes to Antarctica, and the next time we see her, she's waking up in a boat in Antarctica. So then, right back at home, Audrey sees B, Bee's freaking out. She's like, we haven't seen your mom. And then Audrey tells her that her mom, like, she took her mom to the airport, right? Because I don't think Audrey actually knew, like, she knew that something was up, but she was just trying to help her. And then she told Bee all this, and Bee is like, oh, yes, she's going off to Antarctica. You know, Bee figures out what's up. And so she tells the dad, and she's like, we gotta go get mom. Mom is clearly not well. She's going to Antarctica by herself, and there is another boat that we can take, and we can meet her up in this place where the two boats meet up, and we will get mom. We need to go get mom, because Bee is obviously really close with her mom, because her mom has been raising her literally all these years, and she kind of is like telling this to all her dad, and he's not really taking her seriously. The dad is like, mom's gonna be fine. She's gonna come back to us when she wants to. And he's kind of just over this at this point, because he's just been trying to be a good husband. But for some reason, this marriage has just not been working out. Her mental health, his not recognizing of her mental health. They are just not spending time together anymore because of how busy he is. But eventually the daughter persuades him, and she's like, we are going to go get mom. We have to go get mom. I can't remember exactly how it happens, but it does. So they are going to go on a different boat and hopefully try to meet up with Bernadette at a, like, I think it's like a research station or a rendezvous place in Antarctica, like a tourist type thing. And yeah, so that's their plan. They're gonna get on a different ship, and they're gonna try to meet up with her, because the ships are supposed to meet up like at that place on the same day. So while on this ship, Bernadette meets a person named Becky, and she's kind of off. So they go on this kayaking trip, right? She gets a life vest. She asks for a single kayak, and she goes. And so she's out there, and then she meets this girl named Becky, who's like, I am taking these research samples. You are going to, like, can you help me? You know, because it's just us out here. Like, there's literally just ocean all around us, and I need help taking these research samples because I'm a scientist that's going to, I think it's like, I forget, like, it's like the furthest place in Antarctica you can go. It's like a scientist research center. She's going there, and she's collecting these samples, and they're like, and she says something about how they're going there, but it's probably going to be demolished soon because they're building a new one. And you can see, like, right as I heard this, I knew where this was going. Bernadette's like, oh, they're building a new one? Who's the architect? And she just starts asking these questions. And it's such a cute throwback to, like, where her professor, they were talking, and he was like, you would ask all these questions, like how many men, how many women, how often do they use the bathroom, like obscure questions, and it made her a brilliant architect. And so she starts asking these questions again, and we're like, Bernadette is back on her architecture stuff. And it's like a good thing. She's kind of starting to get some purpose again. She goes on these kayak rides. She makes really good friends with this girl named Becky, and totally isn't as anxious as she usually is before. So while they do all this work together, Bernadette is absolutely fixated now. She has this project in her head. She's like, I am going to be the architect for this, like, this station, this research station. This is exactly what I want, and I am going to get there. I forget what the location specifically is, honestly, but yeah, it's like the furthest research station in Antarctica, and they're like rebuilding it. So she's like, I need to go there. And so she's telling this woman, Becky, she's like, I don't care how, I need to get there. I'm going to build this station. And they somehow brilliantly kind of with their movie luck on their side, they get her there to this station, and she talks to the lady in charge. She kind of stows away, right? And then she's talking to the lady in charge, and the lady in charge is like, I have people, everyone wants to do this. I have senators that are literally that become mechanics just to be able to go here. And you think you can waltz in here and go, and it's a good point. But Bernadette, like, she pitches a very convincing case. She's like, I have to do this. You need an architect. It can be me. And so eventually the lady kind of wears down to Bernadette's pestering and is like, you have got to get your wisdom teeth out, and we're going to have a doctor do it ASAP, and then you can go. You can go. And she's freaked out. She's so excited. You're seeing she's kind of starting to get some of her old spark back. And right as she's there, Elgin and Bee, so they've been trying to catch up with her for like this whole thing, but the ships were kind of delayed because obviously the Antarctic weather is not very reliable. So they're just trying to catch up with her, and they kind of hijack this boat, which a little unreliable. You'd think the ship would have some, I mean, not unreliable, a little not very realistic. You'd think the boat would have some better security than that. But anyway, they steal a boat, they go to this research station, and right as Bernadette is making this phone call to them being like, hey guys, I'm so sorry, I got this project, I have to go, it's gonna be for 5 weeks in the South Pole, they bust in, and they have this super cute family reunion, which I really liked. It was really cute. And Elgin, going back to the Saint Bernadette thing, is like, or B, she's like, there's no way I can be all 16 of your miracles. Like, you got way more to go. Go do this architecture thing. And it's so cute. And so they go off and they say, not go off. And so they're like, we're going to support your dream. And then the movie ends. I'm pretty sure it's like them watching the sunrise or something like that as a family. So cute. The credits scene is basically just the like designs for her project, and it like shows what it would look like. So, pretty solid movie. So my two overall critiques that I definitely had with the writing and the writing issues were the FBI subplot and the mental health. So the FBI subplot, I already went off about this before, totally unnecessary, kind of distracts from the message of this movie, how this creator stopped creating, and they kind of just throw it in for no reason. I couldn't tell you why. I wish they had taken this out and just had her expose to no one and, you know, just figure out a way to do this other than having to work this plotline in. Yes. And then the other problem I have is the mental health portrayal. Now, I'm just gonna be honest, this is definitely very like biased, obviously. But throughout this whole movie, they set up that Bernadette has serious mental health problems, which is totally normal for a person. But then right as she gets to this like realization where she can rediscover her passion, they act like it all magically goes away. And granted, she can totally be a happier person. A lot of artists are like that once they stop creating, you know, they're not doing so well. And you can see this change in her, but the change just, I wish they had explored a bit more on maybe how she's going to figure this out with her mental health, because if this happened once, it's not going to go away. She clearly has severe anxiety, insomnia, and it can't just all be based on this failed architecture project. I find that very hard to believe, even though that's a traumatic experience. And I just wish they had touched a bit more on her mental health, other than being like, she's got an architecture project now, she's fine. But yeah. Other than that, I'd say pretty good movie. Yeah, that's it. If you're still here after listening to me rant about all this, I really appreciate it. Thanks for watching. Bye.